Are there any interesting behind-the-scenes stories from Reliving Mark? It's a question I get asked all the time, and it's one I love to answer because we had so many amazing experiences while we were filming in Israel. A missile attack, an angry storekeeper, freezing water, how we found our Jesus character, lives touched along the way, and so many stories of God's amazing providence. Hi, I'm Cosaert, the writer and host of Reliving Mark, Discovering Jesus in Israel. In the first of several behind-the-scenes episodes, I want to share with you two stories from episode 1. If you watched the episode, you know it focuses on the appearance of Jesus in the Judean desert and his baptism by John the Baptist. As I note in the episode, it was the common expectation in Judea at the time that the Messiah would appear in the desert, announcing a new Exodus experience of delivery for the people of God. So the appearance and baptism of Jesus is important in Mark's Gospel, since it identifies Jesus as the Messiah. With such an important scene right away in episode 1, we wanted to get it right. In preparation for his role as John the Baptist, Ron Yardeni, who is also our logistics coordinator, had spent months growing a beard. The challenge was that he also needed to be able to appear in later episodes without a beard. And we had to film part of one of those episodes on our second day of filming. That meant all the scenes of John the Baptist in the Jordan had to be filmed right, and we had just one day to do it in. And that was our first day of filming. Our plan was to film the baptismal scene in the Jordan River where John the Baptist had actually carried out his ministry and baptized Jesus. When we arrived at the location, it quickly became clear to us, however, that the site just wouldn't work. Due to the heavy rainfall, the Jordan River had overflowed its banks, making access to it far more limited and difficult, especially with a large crowd of tourists at the site. If that were not difficult enough, the runoff flowing into the river from the heavy rain had made the Jordan a very muddy brown. So as much as we wanted to film the baptismal scene in the Jordan River, we felt that the color of the water would be a major distraction for our viewers. We needed to find a different location. Fortunately, Ron told us that there was a beautiful spring about an hour away that would be just perfect for the shot. As you can tell from watching the episode, the site was beautiful. The water was so crystal clear you could see the bottom of the river, and the area was not overrun with tourists. It looked far more like what the Jordan from the time of Jesus would have looked like than the muddy Jordan itself. There was only one problem, and we didn't discover it until we actually started filming. Since it was the middle of April, the water, which was from Mount Gilboa, was actually freezing cold. When Rachel got in the water to play the role of a woman John baptized, her whole body was shivering from the cold. She had to do all she could to not shiver when it was time for the scene to start. And she did a great job, as did Aaron and the camera crew, who were in the water for a really long time. You would have never guessed how cold the water was. Well, all the scenes turned out perfectly. One of my favorite shots is the look in John's eyes when he recognizes who Jesus is, the Messiah, and that he had come to be baptized by him. Speaking about baptism, I probably should say something about the way we filmed the baptismal scene. People often ask me why we chose to have John the Baptist baptize people by placing his hand on their head and pushing them under the water, rather than in the traditional Christian manner of immersion with the person being laid backward in the water. The reason is that the Christian manner of baptism is not likely the way John baptized people. The Christian manner of immersion symbolizes the death and burial of a person as they're immersed under the water and then symbolically born again as they come out of the watery grave. The Bible tells us that John's baptism was a baptism of repentance, so it was different. His baptism was about moral cleansing. The priest and the community at Qumran also had a form of baptism in which they immersed themselves under the water for ritual purity. So John's baptism seems to build on that tradition as he expands on its meaning and purpose. So it is for that reason that we chose not to depict the baptism of John the Baptist as a Christian baptism. So what about the missile attack and that angry storekeeper? I'll have to save those stories for a future episode, along with other stories of God's amazing providence. So I hope you can join me for that. Until then, take care and thanks for watching.